Hello. Where do I start? A deep apology, I think, would do for disappearing on you for this long. How long has it been now? 3, 4, 6 months? But in all seriousness, I must apologize for vanishing or disappearing on you. What's happening is I'm at the tail end of a very, very selfish project. And hopefully, not too long from now, we will return to the days of weekly, release of content. But today, I have been dragged out of my hiding by a headline by the most read newspaper in the United Kingdom. That's the Daily Mail. For the more international audience, the Daily Mail has approximately 2 million daily readers. It circulates, I think, approximately 960,000 copies of the paper per day. So that's just to give you an idea of how big this paper is. And so a couple of days ago, I think precisely on the 17th, this was the headline. Migrants from Nigeria are bringing the highest number of relatives to the UK and now face clampdown under Home Secretary Suella Braverman. Now, this is very particular to me because I came into this country as a student and I came with a wife and 2 kids. So this article is a fine but very one-sided information that I hope to, balance by this video. And the reason is because you don't need to look too far to see why I think I need to do this, because the comments that came with this headline just tells you how important this balance is. I'll just read a couple of those comments to you now, and I'm sure you'll be able to read them as you look at. So you can see that the first comment there by a Lagoon lady in Greensby in the UK says, once again, it's wrong being able to bring relatives into the UK if you can't support them or they can't support themselves. As I'm going to show in this video, no student is able to bring a student, a dependent into this country without proving in terms of funds that they are able to take care of them. I speak as someone who has gone through the process. Casey, what checks are done that the women and children are actually relatives? Perhaps they bring in new children each time they fly in, or DNA records kept? Good. Very important. Trust me, the check is annoyingly detailed. More comments by Brian Anderson in London. It is not about being racist. I'm sure someone has referred to this individual as a racist by reason of their comments. I wouldn't be reaching for that R word today. I would, prefer ignorant to racist. Although it is difficult to argue that there is a single racist that is not ignorant. Racism in itself is born from a great depth of ignorance, because everything it stands for can only be believed by a very, very ignorant person. And the truth is, we always see what we want to see, right? So sometimes some of this ignorance is deliberate. People just avoid anything that exposes them or that destroys, some of the crazy beliefs they have. And so this individual believes we have no social housing left, no school places, and the NHS is on its knees. Now, not every immigrant, and that blanket word immigrant that has been, one of the most demonized words in the world, not necessarily in the world, in certain, segments of society, just for the sake of emphasis, describe people who are fleeing some very, very grim situations in some instances. And come to think about it, as someone who came into this country not too long ago, I had to abandon 30 years of my life to start an entirely new life. That's not an easy decision. For what? Trying to, most likely for some people, find a better means of livelihood. And one of the things I said earlier is, the ignorance of racism. What part did you play in the decision to be born in the UK and not in Nigeria or Libya or Afghanistan or any of these other places that people are coming here from? But that's a discussion for another day. Back to the crazy comments. Out here 54 says, and 35,000 migrants just this year to house and look after as well. Now, students who come to this country legally, by the way, do not need to be housed or looked after because they pay heavily, or we pay heavily to come here. Anything to deflect their inability, Albert in London says, their inability to stem the boats coming into the UK illegally. This individual now concludes that every immigrant actually comes into this country using one of those dinghies. That is not true, Mr. Alberta. Some people go through the process, pay heavily, I repeat, to come to this country. Dewey's in London. I don't care if anyone's married. They shouldn't be allowed to bring anyone else into the country. We've been a world charity for scrounges for far too long. Again, not every immigrant are scroungers. Some of them, most of them, contribute positively to the fiscal, assets of this country. Lizzie in Hitchin, I work for the NHS, and you get a lot of mature students at universities. There is a massive loophole there that needs closing. I doubt strongly that you actually work in the NHS, because if you do, you would be thanking some of these people for bringing the much needed workforce into this country. The Face of Reason in Trowbridge in the UK says, students bringing their families with them. How does that work? That works because some people need to be here for 4 years. And if you are what do I use? Let's use mild words. If you're so daft as to think that it is okay for a family person to leave his or her children for 4 years, then I don't know, I can't help you. So that's just some of those headlines. And now to the fine but grossly and seriously one-sided details of the reports by the Daily Mail. Nigerians accounted for 40% of all dependents who accompanied foreign students in the 12 months to June, despite Nigerian students making up just 7% of all foreign students in that period, according to the Home Office figures. Some 34,000 Nigerians were given study visas in the UK, bringing with them a total of 31,898 dependents. By comparison, 114,837 Chinese students who came to the UK last year brought with them a total of 401 dependents, while 93,049 Indian students came to Britain with 24,916 dependents. Now, this plot shows a comparison of Nigerians to these other countries. And you don't need to look too far to know that this is grossly one-sided. Nigerians don't just give birth because they want to come to the UK. Nigerians don't just pull children and fake dependents out of the, caves when they want to come to the UK. Look at the birth rates of these countries. You would realize that Nigeria has the highest birth rate across in all of these countries. What that therefore means is, if you want Nigerians, the culture of having minimum of 2 to 4 children would come along with them. But these dependents and these children, are they actually liabilities? In a case where people pay heavily, and I'm sure most of you are not aware of that, to bring these dependents, are they actually draining the system or positively contributing to the system. And I would like to quickly draw our attention to the brilliant, beautiful Chimamanda Adichie and her beautiful words in that TED Talk in 2009, which she titled The Danger of a Single Story. Some lines from that TED Talk. The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. Stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair the broken dignity. She adds, when we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, and I add anything, we regain a kind of paradise. That's the premise of this video. I intend to provide the other side of this story that makes it look like Nigerians have come from their caves and come with dinghies to this part of the world to come and take over your resources. Maybe that's what the article or the post or whatever is meant to achieve. But if only you would allow yourself to hear the other side of this story, hopefully you would gain this paradise state of mind that saves you from all the anger and hatred towards a number of innocent people. So this plot, as you can see, shows the birth rates of Nigerians compared to people from these countries. Obviously, 35 children in 1,000 Nigerian adults, as compared to less than 12 or 13 for China. China is a country that I think has a law that restricts the number of children people can have. So it's not fair to create that balance. But again, like I repeat, for every dependent that a Nigerian brings into this country, they pay visa application fees, they pay health surcharges for every year they stay here. So let's come to why and where these monies go to. The UK government website, that's where I got this information. Education generates billions for the UK. And how does that work? The latest figure shows that education generates almost £20 billion for the UK in 2016 through exports such as international students. Precisely. Exports such as Nigerian students. All right, let's move on. This exports or this income from education or from Nigerians is so interesting that a 2021 update by the UK government intends, and the aim, I read, at the heart of this update, we are reaffirming our commitment to the ambitions of the 2019 strategy to increase the value of our education exports to £35 billion per year, and the number of international students hosted in the UK to at least 600,000 per year. We are reaffirming our ambition to achieve both by 2023. This document, as you can see, is signed by yours truly, the present Prime Minister. And I'm talking about the Right Honorable Elizabeth Truss, who was then the Secretary of State for International Trade and President of the Board of Trade and Minister of Women and Equalities. Also signed by the then Secretary of State for Education, the Right Honorable Gavin Williamson. This is to show you how important these scrounges, Nigerians who come to this country, are to the economy. And precisely this document, as you can see, targeted people from certain countries, Nigeria being one of them. And one of the things that they did at that time was the introduction of the graduate visa route. Again, I would show to you that that also is not free. So between 2019 and 2021, as you can see from this plot on the far right, or maybe your left, depending on how you're watching, you can see a spike, a serious increase in the number of students coming into this country from 2019. Precisely for Nigeria, as of 2019, we had 8,384 students. 2022, 65,929. What this shows you is that these people don't really come into this country for the education. They are looking for an opportunity to come into this country legally rather than coming in through dinghies, pay and spend heavily, work hard, get opportunities, and settle in this country if possible. I use myself as an example. I was fortunate to get a highly contested, a highly competitive scholarship now by the government of Nigeria that was willing to pay my fees, and I attend one of the top universities in this country. Fees with bench fee goes as high as maybe 25,000. Actual school fees around 22,000, 23,000 pounds per annum for 4 years. In addition, my scholarship body pays me 1,550 every month to be able to take care of myself and my family. All of these funds go into the system. Now, this is how expensive it is for you to be able to stay in this country. And as I would show in the course of this presentation, you would see, or in the course of this recording or this video, you would see that in the broad scheme of things, immigrants or students precisely contribute positively to the system in terms of fiscal contributions. Now, just a quick breakdown, as you can see. For someone who wants to come to this country, they will have to pay visa fees. Now, to apply for student visa from outside the UK, you're looking at approximately £363 per person. And for any other, to extend or switch, if one is already in the UK, it's going to be about 490. In addition to this amount I'm talking about will be paid for the individual in question and their dependents, each of their dependents. In addition to this, people who intend to come into this country for studies would have to pay the immigration health surcharge, which basically is money you pay to take care of your health when you come to the country. So if people say they put pressure on the NHS, I think it's because they are not aware of this fact. So you pay 470 per year for a student, which amounts to 940 for 2 years, and 624 per year for all other visa and immigration applications for dependents and all of that. Now, aside that payment, there's what they call the proof of fund, where before you are able to bring any dependent to this country, you are able to you must show that you have the means to take care of them, and this is shown in form of a fund that you have to prove that you have. This comes to the sum of 849 per month if you are planning to stay within London, or 680 per month. I don't know if that has been reviewed recently if you're staying outside. Now, after the period of studies, those who intend to stay in this country will then take the option of the graduate visa. And the graduate visa is also not free. You have to pay £715. That's the visa application fee for yourself. And you have to pay also for your dependents, each of those dependents. So if you look at it critically, the more dependents people bring, the more money they will have to bring into the system. And then for each of their dependents, they'll have to pay health surcharge, and including themselves. And this is usually around £624 for each year that one intends to stay in the UK. So if one studies for a master's degree, they would most likely stay 2 years after to find a job, after which, if they don't, they will be deported to their country. Also, if they are staying for it's a PhD, I think they get 3 years, and that's, you have to pay for all of those things. Now, what this shows to you is that people who come to this country, now let me give you an example of myself. Before coming to this country, I had over 7 years experience as a university lecturer. My annual salary, if I put it all together without spending a dime, would come to a little above £2,000 per year if I convert the Nigerian currency to the UK, the British pound sterling. What that tells you is my annual salary is not even enough to pay for my visa application fee, my health surcharge, and my flight ticket. and that's where I'm going with this. What this tells you is that to be able to afford the cost of coming to this country for studies, you can't be a scrounger. You can't be someone who is coming to place burden on the system. And as research has shown, most Nigerians who come to this country have a minimum of a bachelor's degree and are coming here to work very hard to pay tax into the system, to fill in the vacant spaces that are urgently crying for space to be filled. Now, most of the Nigerians who come to this country end up working in the health sector, and we will come to that. And so I try to look at research, studies, publications that have looked at actually the actual pros and cons of immigration to this country. And I couldn't find anyone that specifically talked about students in particular, which I think is very important, because the blanket word immigrants doesn't do anybody any good. These immigrants must be broken into different categories, specifically students. If you're coming here as an international student, your visa clearly shows that you do not have access to public funds. So there's no benefits, there's no public fund whatsoever. So you're more of contributing to the system than you take. And I found this research titled The Fiscal Effect of Immigration to the UK. And this was conducted by the Center for Research and Analysis of Immigration at the University College London. I mean, UCL, not some, backyard university. And these are just a few highlights of some of the things I gleaned or I picked from that. It is surprising how little well-researched evidence exists on how much immigrants take out of and contribute to the public purse. We feel this void in a study published by the Royal Economic Society today in Economic Journal. Our findings show that immigrants to the UK who arrived since 2000 and for whom we observe their entire migration history have made consistently positive fiscal contribution regardless of the area of origin. So whether they're from Nigeria or from anywhere. In contrast, over the same period, natives, talking about some of these people with these comments, made an overall negative fiscal contribution of £616.5 billion. The net fiscal balance of overall immigration to the UK between 2001 and 2011 amounts therefore to a positive net contribution of about £25 billion over a period over which the UK has run an overall budget deficit. It therefore means that these people, to an extent, pay the benefits that some of these people get. This conclusion is further supported by our evidence on the degree to which immigrants receive tax credits and benefits compared with natives. Recent immigrants are 43%, that's 17% points less likely to receive state benefits or tax credits. This tallies neatly with what I said earlier: no records or no access to public fund. Additionally, our research points at the strong educational background of immigrants. For instance, while by 2019 the percentage of natives with a degree was 24%, that of immigrants was around 35% and 41% respectively. Now, what this tells you is that these people are not actually enemies. They are here to contribute positively to the system. And just to take it a step further, this article by BBC News shows how much the contribution of these people to the health sector, because most Nigerians that I know, their spouses who are here for studies, their spouses and even themselves most times work in the health sector. And what's the present condition of the health sector? This article says, good care is what you would want for yourself and your parents. And it's not there. It's totally broken. Kathy, who asked not to use her full name, says finding care for her 83 years old mom, Maureen, was a nightmare. They are not alone. Now figures show the number of care workers in England has fallen for the first time, leaving more people without support. So some of these people you are throwing these angry comments at are actually here to save the day because most of them would be working in the sectors that you ordinarily wouldn't want to work. The number of empty care jobs would rose by 52% in a year, says the industry body Skill Care. Now, Maureen, the lady we just talked about, died of liver cancer last month on the same day as the Queen. Her last months shaped by failing in the health and social care system. So these are people who should be encouraged to come rather than discouraged from coming. But sometimes it doesn't matter what one says. Some people will just stick to their guns and some of their crazy ideologies. And to be honest, in the words of somebody I truly respect, a mentor, James O'Brien of the LBC, contempt for the conman and compassion for the conned. These things sometimes are not people's faults. It's what they've been told and what they've been fed. In one of my videos, I talked about you trying to understand who actually owns or the source of your prejudice. Most people just jump on ideas that are sent or sold to them for profit reasons and do not really understand or take the time to understand these things. But my hope is that, in the words of Chimamanda Adichie again, when we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place or anything, we regain a kind of paradise.